Do you know where Miami is? Because Ty went on a date with a girl that thought it was in California, and we're gonna get into that. But this is step number 16, and it's called Rousseau the Renaissance Man, Iron Sharpening Iron, and the Edge Effect. Why you must embrace controversy. And both yesterday's episode and this episode are focusing on philosophers. Yesterday we focused on the French philosopher René Descartes, but today we're focusing on a philosopher from the 1700s named Jean Rousseau. And he is important in this lesson because he's a great example of a past Renaissance man. Also, you could call that person a polymath. And a Renaissance man slash polymath is someone who spoke multiple languages and understood a variety of subjects such as history, art, music, economics, politics, and religion. They drew their knowledge from a wide variety of sources. And another term for that is being eclectic. And unfortunately, our modern culture doesn't incentivize you to become a Renaissance person. Today, through social bias, one of the 25 cognitive biases, we tend to focus on what other people focus on. We tend to watch where other people's eyes go. And probably some of that is ancestral, but a lot of the people that we focus on these days are at best one-dimensional in their talents, and at worst, like reality stars, have no talent whatsoever. And we tend to hold in high regard people like athletes, entertainers, and people with sex appeal. But it's not so much about people's brain knowledge. But Ty wants you to be dislike those people and be more of a Renaissance person. And you do that by gathering a wide variety of learning sources. One person that you could consider a current living Renaissance person is George Lucas. And he directed, of course, the Star Wars movies. And one thing that he attributed his success to in those movies was he said that he was eclectic. He said, in college, I read everything from history to art to language to music. So he was gathering a wide variety and a wide mix of ingredients. He didn't pigeonhole himself to only learning about science fiction, even though that's primarily what his movies were about. What enabled him to have a really good music score in his movies was studying music, and that enabled him to be very specific in what he was looking for when he picked his music composer for those movies. And again, it's important to be a specialist and to be an expert in your field, but it's also makes you a much more interesting person if you are a generalist in other subjects. It kind of rounds you off. We've all been to a party or some other type of situation where you're talking to someone who only knows about their subject area, and they become dull because if that's all you can talk about is one thing, you're not very interesting and you don't have a lot of depth. We need to make war with a multitude of counselors. If you go to Ty's website, he has that top 100 books that he recommends you reading. Notice that on all those books, it's a wide variety of subjects. There's autobiographies, there's stuff on sports, studies on human anatomy, communication, religion, being charitable. There's a wide variety of subject matters. And, he gives the example that if you want to own a restaurant, you shouldn't only read stuff about restaurants. You should go much deeper than that. You should expose yourself to a more variety of perspectives. And he gives another example of someone like Julia Child the world-renowned chef and cook. But he says, despite Julia Child's talents, if we only gave her carrots, she would not be able to make as good of a meal as someone with less talents but more ingredients. And, you know, Ty gives even another example that's kind of silly, but he says he was on a date with a girl one time, and he was explaining to her that tomorrow he has to fly to Miami. And she said, Miami? Where's that, in California? And the point is, you don't want to not know where Miami is. It doesn't mean you need to be an expert on Miami, but it does mean you need to have a general idea of world geography. And of course, Ty explains that not only should you read a variety of books, because this causes something called the edge effect, which is a term in ecology that I mentioned in a previous lesson, but it says that the most diversity in species is not at the center of an ecosystem, but it's at the intersection of two or more habitats. So the most variety of animals are not at the center of the woods, but they're where the woods meet the lake. In the ocean, the most abundant species are not at the center of the ocean, they're at the coral reef, kind of the area where the ocean meets the land. And we learn about Bill Gates too. You may like or dislike Bill Gates, but you can't argue with his effectiveness. And this is not deciding who's right or wrong. Again, that's the kind of black and white archaic mind that Ty suggests that we avoid. But we're trying to study who the most effective and persuasive people are in history. And Bill Gates likes to not only read, but he focuses his reading. I think once a year he goes on these things called reading vacations. He takes a stack of books that he's been meaning to get to of all different subject matters, and he goes 50 miles away where he can be uninterrupted, and he just goes through and reads all those books. And what he says is, although the books are all different subject matters, all the main ideas in the books start to ping off of his brain, and those different subject matters and the ideas in the books give birth to new ideas and new innovation. That's why, generally speaking, you'll notice that a lot of innovation happens in cities where there's a lot more people than in the rural areas. And the point of this lesson is to figure out, where are you weakest in? What subject do you know least about? Is it religion? Is it science? Is it history? Is it language? Is it geography? Is it politics? Remember, iron sharpens iron means that some of these new ideas will create conflicts in your mind, but that's good because you need to tough it out. You don't want to be what's called a butter knife. You want to be a sharp knife, and that comes with edges because iron sharpens iron. So the question for you is, which area that you don't know about most intimidates you, and will you spend a week exposing yourself to it? Thanks so much for watching. See you on the next lesson. Take care.